What's up, guys? Another video of Dad's famous recipes. We can consider this part 2 of my cabbage video. We're going to be making some buttermilk cornbread to go along as a side dish both for lunch and for dinner this evening. So I'm putting an empty pan, baking pan into the oven, and we're going to bake it on 350. We're going to let that come to temperature empty, and I'll show you why here in just a little while. For today's recipe, we're going to be using Martha White buttermilk cornbread mix. Buttermilk gives a little bit better flavor. It's just a very southern thing. We're also going to be adding some jalapenos to this and some cheese. It's going to be pretty cool, so we'll be back with more in just a minute. Alright, so we're basically just following the directions on the back of the Martha White buttermilk mix, but we're not making a huge batch because we just want like one pan of it. So obviously it calls for an egg. It's going to call for 1 1/3 cups of milk. It's kind of weird to me. It says vegetable oil 1 teaspoon, and then down here it says vegetable oil again, 1/4 cup. So I always just kind of even that out and throw in like a 1/2 cup at the same time. So we're going to do that. We got our egg in there. Throwing in a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. Now it's going to want, what is this, 2 cups of the Martha White stuff. I think that's still just a 1/2 cup. Alright, so I'm just going to fill this thing up 4 times. My stomach's rumbling. The raisin bran wore off from this morning. So I've added in the meal mix. I always just fill my measuring cups over the container because I don't like to waste ingredients. Another pro tip, if you're making buttermilk cornbread, why not use buttermilk instead of regular milk? So we're going to do that. We're going to add in, hang on, what's it going for? Got in a 1/2 cup. Okay, it's saying 2 cups. Nope, hang on. Milk, 1 1/3 cup. So that's a 1/2 cup. That's a whole cup. And that's more or less 1/3 of a cup. Also, pay attention, some of these bags have multiple recipes on them. One time I started making the Hush Puppy recipe before I realized that I was reading the wrong side of the bag, so try not to do that. Alright, so that's all in there. I'm going to find a wire whisk and just start whisking this together. Now if you do use buttermilk, it's going to be thicker than the recipe that calls for regular milk. So sometimes what I do, I'll cheat a little bit and just splash an extra little bit of 2% in after I've mixed it, so that I make sure that it's runny enough to actually pour it into our pan. Alright, that's mixed. Alright, so now we're pulling our pan out of the oven. It's not fully preheated, but I don't care. By the way, I never preheat. I think it's a scam. Like, if it's going to cook, just go ahead and put it in the oven. So I'm going to take one of these little things. I don't know what they're called. They're like little canoe paddles. And I'm going to put in some butter into our hot pan. And then watch this. I'm basically just smearing the butter all over the surface. And the reason why I'm doing that is because we don't want the cornbread to stick to the edges of the pan, and it's also going to mix in with our cornmeal mix and add to the flavor profile of the cornbread. So now we've got our pan nice and coated, and because in the next video we'll be doing taco soup, I'm going to add the jalapenos and some cheese to our cornbread mix. So now we've got some jalapenos. I'm just going to add in, I usually do about 3 hefty scoops of jalapenos. Use a fork because you don't want the juices from the jalapenos to mix in and dilute the cornmeal mix. So use a fork so you get enough in there. Now, you can use any kind of cheese. To be honest, once it melts with the cornbread, you're not going to tell the difference between Colby or mozzarella or whatever. So you can use Fiesta blend, you can use Colby Jack, and we're just going to put in about 2 inches of cheese. You don't want too much because you do want the cornbread to cook all the way through and be able to tell if it's done or not. If you put too much cheese, it'll be kind of fluky. Right, so now we're going to pour it into the pan. We've got the jalapenos and the cheese all mixed together. You can get most of it out with a whisk, but that's where this little paddle thing comes in handy because you can really get all of the ingredients out. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't like to waste ingredients. So this is all going to run out into the pan. Now because the pan is hot, you don't really have to smooth it out. I mean, it's going to, just by gravity, level out in the pan. We're going to go ahead and put this into the oven on 350. I think the recipe actually says to bump it up to 425, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. Now, with cornbread, depending on the size of the pan, you want to go about 25 minutes. So it's right at noon. We're going to pull it out about 12:25. But I also go by look. So we're going to periodically look in at the oven and make sure that the edges are not getting black. And then once it's got that crispy brown color tone, we're going to go ahead and pull it out. So we're back with the cornbread. Like I said earlier, it's on 425, which is what the recipe calls for, and it should have gone in for 25 minutes, but I kind of cook by sight, you know, smell and taste. I can see the edges are starting to turn really dark, almost black, and so that tells me it's time to come out, even though it's a few minutes early. Now, it's got the color that we want. Obviously, you want to let it cool to fully set up, but at this point, you can go ahead, break it open with a spatula, and just sort of examine, and I can see that it's fully cooked. It looks a little wet, but that's just the butter on the bottom of it. So once that cools, I'll be able to taste it. It's fully done, ready to go. So hope you like this video. Catch you next time on the next one of Dad's Famous Recipes. Thanks for watching.